going to talk about creating a new and beautiful vision for 2023. So here at the beginning of January, we're seeing lots of stuff about setting goals, vision boards. There's just this enormous pressure to feel like we have to get our entire life together right out of the gate and have a strong start. And while I do believe in strong starts, I am also the type of person that works better kind of in a slow and steady method. And maybe you're the same way. If so, give me a thumbs up or let me know in the comments. And part of the reason why I love creating a digital vision board every year is because it lends itself to that sort of like slow and steady type approach. I like to say it's like the laziest thing that you can do to make your visions come to life. We're going to be talking more about that in the next video. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button now so that you won't miss out on it. But today we're going to be talking about looking back on your last year. I'm going to share a look into my 2022 vision board and talk about like how it all went, like what came true. I think that it's really important to do an exercise like this before we get into starting to create a new vision board and setting like new goals without stopping to pause and reflect and look back on what's happened in the last 12 months. We are skipping over a really essential step in recognizing all of the good that has come our way. And since I started doing this, I've kind of been blowing my own mind. If you haven't yet watched the video where I share my favorite manifestation story that came as a result of vision boarding, I will link to that below. Definitely check it out. But this practice is in alignment with that quote. I think it comes from Albert Einstein, but who knows, that says you can choose to see life one of two ways. You can choose to look at things as if nothing was a miracle or if everything was a miracle. And I think in choosing to believe that everything that happens to us is a miracle, is special, is beautiful, when we put those wishes or those dreams out there, it's recognizing that those things have actually happened. Because I think we get so narrow-minded and we get this tunnel vision where we're so focused on the next thing that a lot of times our dreams do come true. Things happen, good things are coming our way, and we miss them. We don't recognize them. We don't honor that life is good to us. I hope that what I'm about to share today will keep you reminded of that. I'm going to be sharing, an in-depth look at my vision board. But if you don't have one to reflect back on, I'm going to share a little tip on how you can do a practice like this without one. And I'll share that little tip toward the end of the video. But for now, let's hop into how things went in 2022. I want to start with what's in the center. My word for 2022 was worth, the year of worth, and that was really needed for me. 2021 was a tough year. It kind of felt like the year when everything collapsed. And I ended the year in not the best place, not my favorite place. I had kind of felt like everything that I had worked toward in my career, I've been sharing online and building my community for over 10 years. I felt like I had been here since the beginning, and then all of a sudden it felt like, where did everybody go? And 2020 and 2021 in a good way brought so many people online and so many new creators, and all the algorithms changed, and it was a big shakeup. As someone who is an Enneagram 9, I kind of fell into that unhealthy side of being an Enneagram 9 and thinking that my voice didn't really matter. I didn't have a place. And with everything that was happening, it just kind of made me shrink. So worth, it was really important for me to choose that word and to remind myself that I did have worth, that I do have an important message to share. And even if that wasn't your experience or that wasn't your word of the year, if that's something that you may have gone through, know that you weren't alone. And it's hard, and it's still hard. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, having that word of the year fixed everything, but it's definitely got me back on track. And a real turning point for me in choosing that as my word of the year was relaunching my website. It was the act of investing in it. I mean, it was a larger monetary investment, especially for a skill that I can do myself. As a designer, I've always, used WordPress and tinkered and designed all of my own websites. But this year I invested in a tonic site shop theme, which I absolutely love. I'm so happy with how everything came out. And I felt like when I put that out there, it was kind of like signaling to me and to the world that like, I'm back. It was like my hello Dolly moment when Dolly shows back up and says like, I'm not ready to retire. I still have work to do, and I still have more that I want to share. And it was just showing to myself and showing the world that I have worth, that I still have worth. So now would be a great opportunity to ask you what your word of the year was for 2022. Share it below in the comments. I always love reading them, especially hearing the meaning behind it. I mean, everyone usually has a really good story about why they chose their word. And now in this moment of reflection, how did that word impact your year, your last year? So the first area that I want to talk about, or the first image that I want to talk about from my 2022 vision board, is this image of Marion Cotillard. And the reason I chose it, other than I love her, I think she's beautiful and aspirational, is that it had that phrase, a new direction. I think coming into this year, I didn't know exactly what needed to change. I didn't even know, would I be offering something new as a service? But I knew that something new needed to happen, and that might sound like basic for the beginning of the year, but that's a phrase that I continue to look at again and again throughout the year. And it was absolutely instrumental in getting that website up. I also love with vision boards, not everything is like this grand transformation. I like finding kind of almost like little jokes or silly things that may end up happening as a result of choosing an image for your vision board. I don't want to share this right now because I'm going to be sharing a upcoming video about my new morning routine and how magazines play a role in it. But for now, I'll just share that having that magazine image up there on my vision board ended up prompting and sparking an idea to solve a problem that happens during my morning routine. So if you're not, I'm going to be sharing that morning routine in the coming weeks. So make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss it. Now I want to talk about the far-reaching corners of my vision board, the upper left and the lower right, because I don't know if it was just coincidence, but those two I can see were the most impactful to me. This first one of what I consider to be an art director or a creative director. I really connected with this image when I found it. Felt like this figure here in the foreground encapsulates the kind of artist and creative person that I want to be. I like that she's dressed in all black and she's wearing heels, but the fact that she's kind of like crouched down and looking up, to me feels like she's showing a bit of like humility. And that's the kind of artist that I want to be. I want to be someone who, it's not just about like, the glamour, and designers can have a reputation for being a bit diva-like, and I think it's important for us to have a little bit of that, but it is also really important to have a spirit where you're willing to show up every day and put in the work because you care that much. My interpretation of that image, like I felt all of those things from this woman who, when we look at vision boards and we see figures in them, we are choosing them because we either want to be that person or we see a little bit of ourselves in that person. And I also really loved this kind of gallery wall that takes up a good part of the image. And I'm gonna say it was subconsciously, I did not go into the year saying that I wanted to redesign the gallery walls in my office, but that did end up being one of the bigger projects that I tackled at the end of this year. So that's one of those kind of little things that I'm going to give credit to the vision board for putting that idea in my head, looking at that image every day. It's something in my brain go like, hey, you really like gallery walls. Why not update yours so that they are more in alignment with the direction that you're going? This other image that I felt like was really significant to me in reflecting on this year was this image of Natalie Wood. And I remember when I chose it, the word that kept coming to mind was vulnerability, which may seem like an odd thing for me to want to invite into my life, considering that I was already feeling super vulnerable going into 2022 and feeling pretty broken. But just like I feel like we need humility, I do feel like all artists need to have a little bit of that vulnerability and willing to keep showing up and putting ourselves out there, even when we don't really know if anyone's listening, if we're on the right track, etc. But the other reason that image ended up being significant is because she is in this pose of rehearsal but performance. And this past fall, I had the opportunity to go and see Funny Girl on Broadway with Leah Michelle. Seeing that performance was moving for me. To be able to see all of these things aligning, to know how much the story of Funny Girl was important to Leah Michelle as a performer, for her to be stepping into this role, into the shoes that Barbra Streisand once walked, who is someone who is her idol, and then just to be able to witness Leah Michelle's talent. I've seen a lot of Broadway performances before, and I've never seen anything like I felt being in that room and seeing her on stage. And all I kept thinking was, this girl is doing exactly what she was born to do. After seeing that, I couldn't shake it. I couldn't get it out of my head. And there are so many of us as artists who have dreams like Leah did, and things that we want to do, and whether it's performance or something else, those things are still waiting for us. And we can be in situations like that where we are just using our gifts to the absolute fullest. So this is a very long-winded way of saying that performance impacted me and inspired me to want to do more of those things that make me feel so alive that I am causing a ripple effect, that I'm like, anyone who's around me is going to feel it and see it. And this is kind of meta in a way. I don't want to become, as much as I love Broadway, don't have dreams of becoming a Broadway actress, but the performative nature of what I do, this is performative. I never really identified it as such. I thought, actresses are in movies and TV shows or on the stage, and this is just something different. But it is similar in a way. Well, I'm not reading a script right now, and this is not acting, this is me being me. There is still a performative element to it. And same goes with podcasting, which I say this year after year, and now I think we are going on our 5th year a podcast for creatives has been around going on its 5th year. I keep saying it's my favorite thing that I work on. So, which kind of begs the question, if it's my favorite thing that I work on, and I feel so alive when I do it, and I feel like I'm really bringing my best energy to a project like that, why am I not doing more of it? And that's a question I'd like to pose to you. What is your version of that? What is your Leah Michelle moment? What is the thing that when you're doing it, everyone around you can feel this positive energy coming out of you? I'm sorry if this is like a little too woo-woo, but I think it's one of those, when when you've experienced being around a person who is just in their elements, it's infectious. So while that image of Natalie Wood began as a symbol of vulnerability, really morphed into this realization that I am a performer in a sense, that I want to create more content and put myself out there and to continue to seek avenues that allow me to share my voice in a way that positively impacts others. So we're going to do a little zigzag from the bottom right corner and up. I did end up watching a documentary about Natalie Wood. Again, I don't know if this was kind of prompted by having this vision board. I had already had it on my to-watch list, so who knows what came first. But I also watched a documentary about Ingrid Bergman, and this was another kind of like, I can kind of see the beginnings of me recording this video here today. She's Ingrid Bergman in that image. She's holding a camera, and I really loved this image because the camera looked like so heavy and so bulky, but she looked so strong in it. And especially knowing, like, at the time, for a woman to be behind the camera, in front of the camera and behind the camera, which is what I love doing, was really revolutionary. And I'll link to the two documentaries I watched. They were both on HBO, one about Ingrid Bergman and one about Natalie Wood. I mean, the commonality between the two of them, even though their lives and their personalities were very different, was just their absolute love of the craft. But I was really happy to learn more about each of them as women, as creatives, and to take the good parts of their story and carry them with me into the year. This image here of this woman who looks like she is from the 1950s in this beautiful gown. When I choose my images, they're not always tied to a specific outcome. I like to kind of choose them based on feeling, and it's no secret that I love this era. I wish that everyone dressed like this all the time, but I do think that when I chose it, I remember thinking that this woman reminded me of my grandma, who ended up passing away in February, so quite toward the beginning of the year. And since I didn't have a picture of my dear grandma on my vision board, I felt like this image became a proxy. One of the special things that happened after she passed away, my great aunt, her last surviving sister, told this little story about my grandma. It was something that I hadn't heard before, and I don't want to get into the whole story here because we talked about it quite at length on an episode of a podcast for creatives that I will plug below. It's called The Secret Creative, and it is about my grandma and the secret that I learned about her at her funeral service. That story impacted me beyond recording the podcast, beyond learning that about her, and it made me feel in a way connected to her. I'm lucky to have a lot of creative people in my family, but it almost felt like every time I looked at that we had this creative bonds that I didn't even know was there while she was alive. So it has kind of been cool to be able to carry that into my life now that she has passed on. Anytime we lose someone, obviously it's a reminder that life is short. So I think another reason why this image ended up being so impactful on my life is that every time I looked at it, I thought of my grandma. I thought of the time that she had here on earth, which thankfully for her was a long, happy life. But I'm turning 40 this year, and it kind of feels like a little bit of a deadline. I know it's not like an end deadline, but it is a marker along the way. And every time I look at that image, I have thought, if you have stuff you want to do, start doing it. Like, now is the time to start doing it and to start enjoying it, because we all only have so much time to use our creative gifts and to do whatever it is that we want to do. So that image was definitely a motivator for me. Let's move on to a happier topic, this image of champagne. If you've been around for a while, you know I've always been a champagne and Prosecco drinker. Choosing this image was less so about the beverage itself and more about this phrase that I did not yet talk about, but it's under my text that says Year of Worth, and it says nothing but the best. And in addition to picking a word of the year and a phrase of the year, pick a song of the year. And there's a Frank Sinatra song, or at least the recording that I like is Frank Sinatra singing it, and it's called Nothing But the Best. And keeping with that worth, it was reminding myself that if there is something that I want to come into my life or something that I want to enjoy, like, why not go for the best version of it? And I think, you know, a lot of us have grown up with this thought that, like, to want the best thing might be like selfish or greedy. But when you kind of reframe it to be the best for you and enjoying things and experiences that make you feel like your best, and going back to, you know, finding that thing that like makes you feel the most alive. I tried to be really mindful this year of not shortchanging myself. This has been a small but significant change this year. Oftentimes when if I would go out to dinner and I order a glass of bubbly, I would look at the menu and say, like, oh, it doesn't matter, I'll just take, you know, whatever's the cheapest one, it doesn't matter. This year I started ordering the most expensive glass on the menu, and that included going out to dinner and also the champagne that I kept in my house. Veuve Clicquot is now my official, like, house champagne. I don't drink champagne on a regular basis, but if I want to have a celebration or we have family or friends over, I want to be able to share that best version with them. I mean, I like creating elevated experiences and having, you know, good champagne to share with family and friends is like, why not share the best with them? Another thing that I have loved and recognized as a result of this image being on my vision board is that anytime my husband and I go to Epcot, I always stop in the little wine store in Epcot to get a glass of champagne. And I don't know if this is an Epcot thing or a French thing. I've not asked, because to me it's kind of like just this little magical moment that happens. But they pour you your champagne. If they have to open a new bottle, if you're kind of like in between the bottom of the last bottle and the new one, they take the cork off and they ask you, they say, would you like this lucky cork? Any new cork that comes out, they deem to be a lucky cork. So I have since been collecting lucky corks from Epcot since the beginning of this year. And I think I may have like 4 of them, but I have them in a little bowl that was actually my grandma's. Just having those lucky corks are just a little thing that makes me smile and makes me remember to treat things like that. Little moments can be magical, even if it's, you know, for some people, they may think it's silly or not significant, but if it's significant to you, or it's, you know, if it's special to you, then, and that makes you smile, then who cares? Speaking of elevated experiences, an espresso machine is something that I have been wanting for years. I keep putting some version of it on my vision board, whether it's a little glass or a little cup of espresso like I did this year, or actually like, you know, an actual machine. But sometimes there are things that we want that, you know, in our minds are so, you know, big, and in this case just expensive, that we don't think that we are worthy, I'll use the word worthy, of them. But it's kind of beautiful that we have people in our life who do think that we are worthy. So if you watched my last video right before this, where I'm opening all the Christmas gifts that I bought for myself, I shared at the beginning of that video that my husband and I typically, in the last, like, I want to say 5 or 6 years, don't really give each other Christmas gifts or birthday gifts. Our birthdays are a day apart and they're in June, so we kind of have these like bookends of the year, and we celebrate our birthdays together, obviously celebrate Christmas together, but our gifts to each other have really just been like free free travel. When we travel, we stay in nice places, we do fine dining, we do it up. And that we always say like, okay, this is our gift to each other. But this year we were in Nantucket for celebrating our birthdays, and my husband surprised me by saying like, when we get home, I ordered you something. Neither of us are good at secrets, so he didn't tell me what it was, but my husband did buy me this espresso machine that I've been wanting, as I said, for years. And it's another one of those things, like I'm no longer drinking cheap champagne. I'm no longer drinking bad coffee. I think anyone who has an espresso machine, I don't know if it maybe turns you into an instant snob, but I have enjoyed my coffee making and drinking experience every single day that I've had this machine. And it looks beautiful in the kitchen. It's just one of those things that I'm grateful that, that he purchased it when he probably knew after all this time that it wasn't something that I was going to buy on my own or even buy together. So I think a lot of us are kind of guilty of someone gives us a compliment, or even someone gives us a gift and we don't have a gift to give back to them. It's really hard to receive it, but one of the things that getting this espresso machine has helped me realize is to just be gracious. Let people do things for you that surprise you. Say thank you, of course, be appreciative of it, but also realize that when these good things come into our life, if we aren't receiving them and we aren't using them, then it's kind of almost like hoarding energy in a way. I keep talking about energy and I don't really know, I'm not like an expert on this. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I can tell you from my own experience that having my espresso machine has improved my life and made me put more positive energy out into the world. I want to talk about what I consider to be failure area of the vision board. This image here of this girl writing. Some of you may know this, some of you may not know this. I wrote a novel. I wrote a book over the course of 2020 into 2021 and pitched it for quite a bit of time to literary agents, which is the first step in getting it published, to no avail. And at the beginning of 2022, I got really vigilant about getting back on track and immersing myself into the writing community and trying really hard to get an agent. But it was kind of a short-lived spurt. I'd say like in the first quarter of the year, I was really focused on it. And then I just abandoned it completely. I definitely have not abandoned the idea of writing, of publishing a book, or finding a literary agent, or even this story. Having failures on your vision board is a good thing, because as you're going into the new year, it kind of makes you stop and say, okay, was this goal or this thing really important to me, or is this something that I'm going to let go? And it kind of puts you at a crossroads, and it's not something I'm ready to let go of yet. It is still significant to me, so I'm glad that I was able to, in reviewing this, look at that image and say like, no, I need to reprioritize this. I need to make this an important part of the next year and my future. The other area that I feel like I didn't quite excel at was this image here of this woman relaxing. She has her feet up, she's reading a magazine, she's in this beautiful location. This has been something I've never been great at and have continued to not been great at in this last year, and that is relaxing. I chose that image for a reason. It was something that I knew that I needed to bring into my life, and I need to kind of learn to let go, turn my brain off, put my feet up, and I didn't do it. So it is one of those things that I would still like to work on, maybe not with the certainty that I feel about that I want to continue to write and publish. Maybe this is just who I am. I'm not the relaxing sort of person. Maybe that image itself is not the way that I prefer to relax. And I think that is a really important thing when you're putting these vision boards together. Is a lot of times we sit down to write, to choose images and create our vision and think about our goals, and a lot of us can be stumped. because the first things that pop into my head anyway are the things that everyone else say are like the generic goals. The like, oh, I want $1 million, or I want a sports car. The more personal we can make our vision boards, the more powerful they will be. And these last two areas, people driving in a car in this beautiful location, I think when I chose that image, it was one of those vague things. I just kind of liked it. I thought it was pretty, and I liked this romanticized version of my husband and I driving off to someplace beautiful, which did in a way come true this year. My husband had to travel quite a bit for work, and I always travel with him because he works at Disney, so of course I always want to go there. I-4 doesn't quite look like this image here. We had our own version of getting to travel together, got to spend some great time together, great conversations. Disney has so many hidden, beautiful places on its property that we got to explore together this year. So, oh, and we ended up getting a new car. So it's one of those, like, didn't quite see all the pieces come together until I was reviewing it at the end of this year. And these last two images, I just want to mention, again, were just not, super purposeful, but I thought that they were pretty. I keep putting bar carts on my vision board. This year I did get really into cocktail making. Maybe that was connected to it, maybe not. And I still don't own a bar cart. I don't know that I want one or not, but I know for sure that this year you're gonna hear me talk about this a lot, and you're gonna see this on my vision board. There are things that I want to do to our home to bring it more to my liking. And I keep putting this kind of like deep blue color. You see it in two places on this vision board, one in a coffee shop, one in what appears to be a home setting. And I think I want to put that color somewhere in my house. So this was kind of one of those, didn't get to it, but is still important to me. And I think 2023 needs to be the year that it actually happens. So if you've been watching this and thinking about how you can reflect in this way, the way that I would recommend that you have this experience is to look back through your photos. If you use an iPhone, you can sort by like month. And if you can, put yourself back in last January. Look through your photos, remind yourself of how you were feeling at that time of year. What was important to you? What was going on in your life? What were you dreaming of a year ago? And then scroll through the rest of your year. You could do it fast and try to spot moments where things that you were dreaming of came to be. And choose to recognize those things as miracles, because they are. And I think the more that we can recognize that our goals actually did come to be, the more we open the doors for more of those beautiful things to come into our life. So that is my hope for you in going into the new year. We're still going to be talking a lot more about vision boarding in the coming weeks. If you're not subscribed, do that now. If you liked this video and this experience and would like to see more like it in the coming year, please give me a thumbs up. It's like the easiest, freest 1-second way that you can show support for the work that I do. Thanks so much for watching, and until we meet again, get out there and make something beautiful.